Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of The Average Podcast. This is Bryce.
This is Tim. And today we've got a special guest with us. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. I'm Caleb.
Credentials?
I worked at a movie theater when I was 16 years old for a solid year or so.
And
So I clearly know a lot about film.
that makes you more qualified than us. Okay. So today we are diving into one of the biggest movies of last year.
And probably one of the biggest movies in a long time.
It was a surprise hit for sure. No one expected it to do what it did.
Yeah, probably my favorite movie of last year still.
Yep. We are talking about Top Gun Maverick.
Ooh, baby. I'm here for it.
Directed by Joseph Kosinski
Love that.
and starring, of course, Tom Cruise.
The Tom Cruise.
We also get a bunch of the original cast back and some new ones, notably Miles Teller. In
He's
major
so
role.
good.
Okay.
Love him and everything.
All
Not
right.
really.
So, no, he's actually fantastic.
No, he's really great. He's a
very
great actor when you actually let him act.
When he's not in Fantastic Four by Josh
I was going to
Trank.
say Footloose remake, but that's just me. So
I don't watch those kind of movies.
Oh yeah, no, they're awful. All right, I'll give a quick summary of this movie. Keep it pretty light because it's a pretty straightforward movie storyline. So this takes place. Did it say how long after the first Top Gun that this
30
takes?
years.
30 years. Okay.
So it exists in real time.
Yes, it's real time. So
Yeah.
30 years after the first Top Gun movie, which is a cult classic. Hard to say it's a great movie, but it's absolutely a movie of a generation. If you ask anyone who saw it when it first came out, people were head over heels for it. The beach volleyball scene, iconic to this day still, and one of the weirdest sex scenes I've ever watched in cinema history. Best to forget about that. But so this takes place 30 years after the first Top Gun. This is kind of your casual sequel to an older movie where it's like, the guy he's older now, he's not quite what he used to be, etc. You know, that's kind of how this movie sets it up. And it's the new generation coming in, and there's this huge threat. So they bring in the seasoned veteran to bring these new people up into this role and hopefully take over for a new generation of quote unquote Top Gun. And that's about the story for the most part. Pretty simple and straightforward.
It's really straightforward. The old guy comes in to teach the new guy.
Yeah.
The only thing I disagree with is it states from the opening scenes that he is still the best at what he does.
He's still the best.
He's not lost his edge.
You're right. He hasn't lost his edge at all. He is still a bad man.
Yes, he is still pretty awesome. So as far as that, we can go ahead, dive into our
why don't you
scores.
kick us off?
Story, I scored the story a 4. Reason being, the story's kind of familiar. We've seen this bringing in the older generation to teach the new generation before. But where this story actually does a favor to itself is really makes it feel like there have been 30 years between the last movie and this movie. And I'm coming at this movie, I've actually never seen the first one. Even after seeing this one, I still did not go back and watch the first one. So I'm just viewing it from this movie and what I pick up from this movie. I don't know the connections other than what this movie talks about. But this movie does a great job in the story of giving us character moments for the old characters that I assume we loved. And bringing in a new generation. A lot of movies kind of fumble bringing in that newer generation, and this does it in a fairly smooth manner. And I think that's what makes this story a little bit better than just the average old teaching the new. Is it really balances those two stories in a great way.
Yeah, I also rated it a 4. There's nothing particularly original about the overarching plot of the old ushering in the new, and there's like some themes in here of like, oh, you're old and outdated, and like, you don't know, old man. Like there's a certain amount of that, as there has to be with any film that has this type of arc where there's the younger generation coming in. But it was
especially Hangman's character. But
yes, for sure. That being said, I think it was very well executed, and it was different enough that it didn't feel like we were just rewatching the same story that we've seen a million times over. Like it was able to kind of define itself well enough and be different enough that it worked.
Yeah, I agree. So Bryce, you were
I gave mine also a 4.
Right.
I wanted to touch on.
Nice way to start this off. In agreement.
Look at that.
There it ends, folks.
We always agree with the movies and the reviews that we have. Yeah, so I gave mine a 4 as well. I was going to see if anyone else was going to touch on it, but I wanted to touch on the obvious fear of nostalgia and how it can ruin a movie in these settings. And I want to just say that the nostalgia was handled perfectly in a movie like this specifically. I know an easy comparison to make is Spider-Man No Way From Home, where nostalgia was clearly the bait of that movie, and it was handled almost perfectly, in my opinion. This is one of those movies where, kind of like Tim was saying, Tim hasn't even seen the first one. And so...
But like you point that out, the nostalgia in this one, like I was able to get everything that was significant to the story from this movie.
Exactly.
I didn't need the other one.
Yeah.
And so it handles, like you said, it handles the nostalgia excellently.
Very sparingly used, and it's all at the beginning mostly. Like there's obviously one big story beat throughout the entire movie that is from the first movie, but I think that's what I really appreciated most about this movie. They kind of got the nostalgia out of the way in the beginning. That kind of, there's good reminiscence of the first movie. Even though it's not a great movie, there's good times that were had in that movie. And you kind of get to like sit with your main character and Tom Cruise and everything that happened there and really just soak in the glory days for a moment. And so you get into the new stuff, which is where that movie really thrives there. I agree with you guys. The characters were all handled really, really well.
You're diving into other categories.
I know. I'm just the overarching story. The story is very original. You can even argue it's just episode 4 again. Same thing with Force Awakens. It kind of copies the same story beats that episode 4 had. But again, as we'll get into other stuff, I think the characters in the story is really what makes this story shine as a whole, and those beats and what they go through and their challenges that they have to overcome with each other. So story, 4 out of 5.
Okay. So on the next category, is character, specifically how compelling is the arc for the characters of this?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and open us up with that one. So I gave a 4 out of 5 for character. I kind of went back and forth with this one a little bit, but
let me guess. Between 3 and 4?
No, actually, I was going for 5.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking 5 and 4, honestly. But that just goes to show how much I really enjoyed this movie. The characters all were great in this movie, in my opinion. They all had their moments where they got to really shine. You got to see some cool character arcs and redemption through multiple different characters. Are
we going into spoiler realm since this movie has been out and just about everybody in America saw it?
I think it's if it slips out, it's fine. It's been out long enough that if you let it slip, it's no big deal, I don't think. So that's a forewarning. Moving forward, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So anyway, if Tim was going to say anything, yeah, I think all the characters had good moments in here. Some kind of fall behind as the story moves forward, and I'm speaking specifically to some of the cadets that come on board moving forward. There's only a few of them outside of Miles Teller's character, Goose, who he is the son of Goose.
Oh, son of Goose Rooster.
Yes, yeah, son of Goose. So Goose Jr. Let's just refer to him as such. He is Rooster. Yes. He's great in this movie. He's phenomenal. And again, Miles Teller is a phenomenal actor when he has good stuff to work with. And he does a phenomenal job. His chemistry with Tom Cruise is honestly, I would say, almost flawless, especially towards the end of the movie. I'm having to remember some of the characters' names, but all of the cadets moving on, they had great moments in the movie. Some of them kind of fall behind towards the end and kind of lose the ground that they had at the beginning when you were kind of getting introduced to all of them. But yeah, I mean, I don't have really much more to say. I think all the characters did pretty well, so 4 out of 5.
Okay. So I actually scored mine a 5 out of 5 because I thought the story of this movie is not the mission that they're on. I was thinking about this after watching it, is that the enemy is almost exclusively referred to as the enemy. And that's because they aren't really what's important here. What's important here is the emotional journey that these characters go on. And so for me, that's what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a character arc, is this tension that Tom Cruise and Miles Teller have at the beginning because of their past, and how the mission that they're going on and what they're training for actually kind of parallels what they need from each other. So they go on this journey together and find each other and what they needed out of each other through it at the end. And it's actually very emotional character arc. And I thought the redemption hits where it needs to. the revelations were significant to their characters. The characters are what needed to drive this movie. It's not really an action movie. It's got action in it, but it is a character-driven story, and it succeeds far more than I actually expected it to.
Yeah, agreed. I'm with Bryce. I gave this a 4 out of 5. The only reason, so I agree with Bryce's assessment that as the movie progresses, the cadets, there's 6 named cadets, and then there's 6 unnamed cadets that are just kind of there, and then towards the end, they're like, oh, these are the cadets that are going on the mission, and what do you know? It's the ones we've been introduced to. But outside of
Surprise.
that, I'm actually not going to hold that against the movie, because when there's that many, you can't really afford each of those their own like full flourishing arc. There's not enough time to tell that story. The only reason I made it a 4 instead of a 5 is some of the characters are just too caricature-y for me. Like they're very just stereotypical towards the beginning. They tell the story beautifully, and everybody
like Hangman
ends. Yes,
Hangman is very stereotypical.
Hangman is one of the most guilty of that. Like at the very beginning, it's like it's just a lot.
Yeah,
like he goes really, really hard on the I'm better than everybody. I don't care about anybody except myself.
I actually love his storyline though. So
yeah, and they tell the story very well.
Yes.
But like John Hamm's character is also like the stereotypical like
he's pretty one note.
The hardened veteran. That's this is my how dare you, Maverick? Like that whole deal. So that's the only reason I gave it a 4 instead of a 5. I think the story arcs are all very well told. I think they progress the characters beautifully through it. The only reason I docked it a point was because things are a little cliche towards the beginning, and that took me out of it just very, very briefly.
Yeah. All right. So the next one is actually, I'm pretty excited about this one. I don't know how much I have to say about it, but music and sound. So music and sound should, because not every movie has music, we also incorporated the sound effects, sound editing, all that into it. And this movie actually excels in both of those. For me, I gave this a 5 out of 5. We have Hans Zimmer and Lady Gaga on the soundtrack. And there are just moments in this that's like, it pulls at your heartstrings at the right moments. The music gets you like your heart racing, but it's also something that like, if it were to go on in like the background of the mall or something, I would know that this is from Top Gun. Like it has that kind of iconic ring to it that I look for in a soundtrack. And then the sound editing on this is amazing. The planes sound fantastic. The action towards the end sounds incredible. Like the sound in this movie is just 5 out of 5 for me. I think the sound is fantastic on this.
Yeah, so this was another one where I really was kind of bouncing between a 4 and a 5, and I can't help but agree with you. Like it is a 5 out of 5, and I just gush over the sound effects of these planes. Like, especially at that ending where it just cuts to silence, and all you're hearing are just these planes roaring through these mountains back and forth. The visuals are stunning. We'll get to that later, but it's just the sound effects of these planes. Like I liked watching some of like the backstories, how they were making this movie, and like watching how they would actually film real planes doing these stunts. And I just remember when we went to see it for the first time, just sitting in the theater, like this movie has to be experienced in a theater. You're not going to get the full effect of this movie unless it's on the big screen with those speakers, because the way the theater just rumbles when those planes just fly by, it is just it makes me blush a little bit. It's so nice. And yeah, I mean, the soundtrack's got that classic 80s vibe to it, and it fits, and it's not like overdone and cheesy, kind of like how the old soundtrack feels now. And I love the old soundtrack. Like I think it's still a banger of a playlist.
This one throws in those nostalgic notes, like you said.
Like right off the bat, you get Danger Zone. It's like, this hits right. But yeah, I think even the music is well placed. It's well timed. You get some really good sentimental moments with some of the characters, and some nice warm piano in the background. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a 5 out of 5.
All right, what's Caleb think?
we are 100% on the same page. This is a hard 5 for me. So you have the nostalgia, you get Danger Zone. Baba O'Reilly is used to perfect effect in the early dogfight training scene. So good. You have a little of the nostalgia with the Great Balls of Fire scene in the bar.
Yes.
Which
sounds amazing.
Yeah, and even if you have, they flash back just enough to show that like it is a callback to a moment in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
But like that is beautifully done. Here's the thing that blew me away and what makes it such a hard 5 for me.
I'm excited for this.
Outside of a horror movie, I have never watched a movie that used breathing to such tremendous effect.
Very nice detail there. Yes.
When they're flying, when they're doing the training exercises, especially when they're doing the stuff that is like pulling like 9-10 G's when they're doing the approach, like when they're getting out, when they do the hard pull up, and then during the kind of the climax when they're doing the actual run.
Yeah.
There's the jet engines and like everything, and there's no music, and you just hear
yeah, that's
like that's adds
awesome
to the intensity so beautifully.
Yeah.
And like you will see it occasionally in horror movies where like it's completely silent and you just hear like the panicked breathing of a victim that you know is about to get stabbed. But that small detail of just like amplifying the breathing to the point where it became a player in the sound completely blew me away. 5 out of 5.
No, that's a very good observation. Like, now that you mention it, I totally remember that being essential to the storyline, essential to the scene.
That was a great point.
I didn't even think about it. Excellent point. So next, this one is also just another hard 5 for me.
I was going to say, it's just going to hand
in hand right here. Hard 5. This is the editing and special effects.
Yep.
This movie will look amazing 50 years from now.
Oh my gosh, it's going to look so good.
Because this is... Did I already say it's 5 out of 5? It's 5 out of 5.
Yeah, it's 5 out of 5.
They use practical effects, and I believe almost entirely.
Like 90-95% of the film.
Maybe some of the explosions.
Which would make sense.
Would make sense, but outside of that, like all of these scenes are practically shot. I was reading about the cinematographer who talks about normally you're involved with every single shot. You're walking them through it, all that stuff. He said that he would rig the cameras in the planes, and then he would not know how those shots turned out until 2 hours later when they landed. And like,
makes sense
because it's all practical. I was
authentic.
Reading the actors learned how to fly.
Yeah, that is true. They did learn how to fly.
Insane. This movie, 5 out of 5, just for insane practical effects. The editing is spot on. Like those dogfight scenes, the training scenes are just as tense as some of the final climax scenes. It is well shot, well edited, and the practical effects, like just the fact that all of this is real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it might be sped up a little bit in post, but
totally.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I'm completely with you. 5 out of 5. I won't repeat much of what you just said. One thing I will touch on. One thing I always have an issue with a lot of movies is, like you were saying, the editing. And just the, how do I want to say it? The inability to cut things at the right time, like timing wise. Like there's, I don't know, if you've ever had experience with just editing and when it comes to cutting from camera to camera to camera, like there is kind of like a timing thing that feels natural and it looks natural. I want to just point out that this movie was cutting wise was very well done. Like those scenes, like when you're talking about like at the beginning when they're training or when they're going through the flight sequences, like the chaotic cutting of like between every pilot and what's going on screen, I feel like was, and maybe this is just me, it was perfectly timed. Like you felt the chaos of what was going on, the intensity, and I feel like that really brought out those moments of just cutting back. Oh, you see the face of the person and you see them looking left because they almost hit something, but then it cuts back out to them actually making that turn, and it just kind of feels so perfectly placed. You get to see the reaction of the person, but you also get to actually see what's happening, and it just all feels so well, like it's so smoothed out together. I just wanted to talk about that because I don't know, that's something that I think about, especially when I did a lot of video producing. Like the cuts were really important to me, and for me when I saw that movie, like I just really appreciate how well edited that movie was between all the action shots and what was going on. So 5 out of 5.
Ditto.
Nothing else to add to that one?
I have basically nothing else to add. No, you guys said
Okay.
it. You guys said it very well. Like the way things are put together. I had a hard time knowing what to score this, not because I didn't think it was amazing. It was because how do you give a rating for special effects when there are almost no special effects?
Right.
Like that was the biggest thing that tripped me up. Like there were almost no special effects used in the movie, and that is what makes things hold up over time.
Yes.
Like, because technology is always going to be dated within 5 years, 10 years after a film is produced.
Yeah.
And so having all those practical effects utilized in the way they shot it with the cameras being where they were, yeah, amazing. 5 out of 5.
All right. So this one is probably where we'll have some disagreements. So Caleb, you want to kick us off with your rating for the script?
Yes. I actually liked the script for the most part.
All right.
I gave it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
I thought they did a good job of not falling into a lot of cliches with the script, which is pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
The interactions in between the characters overall were pretty good. It got a little cheesy sometimes, but not necessarily in a bad way, because there's a little bit of nod to like the 80s, like kitschy kind of stuff here and there. I thought there were interactions between Tom Cruise and basically every other character that evoked emotion.
Yes. Yeah.
Like Tom Cruise and Miles Teller, him and John Hamm, him and Val Kilmer, very briefly, but I thought it was well written, believable. So I dinged it a little bit just because there were a couple times where there was something that was a little too kitschy for me. Yeah. But for the most part, I thought it was very well scripted.
All right. So I actually gave it a 5. And
that's surprising.
Part of that, I know. I told you might be surprised by my score from this movie. I actually appreciate some of the kitschy stuff because I do feel like we've mentioned the character of Hangman, who kind of plays the typical I'm better than everybody, and his lines fit that. His script is well constructed to represent that character. The script of Miles Teller is fantastic for him. Just kind of, he's trying to keep his head down and do what he needs to do and not bring up these issues that Tom Cruise keeps pushing and wanting to talk about. And Tom Cruise actually gets some fairly emotional segments in the script.
Oh, dude.
Which, like,
the Iceman scene.
I typically think, well, I don't want to get into the acting, but yeah, like, I thought this script was one of the best balanced scripts that I have seen in a long time. The humor lands when it's there. I would not call this a funny movie, but there is some humor that breaks the tension that, like, you almost get a sigh of relief because you're like, oh, good. Like, that was funny. I can, like, it does what it's supposed to do when the humor hits. The tension in those scenes, the script is like, it's believable that these people are scared for what is happening. Like, are they going to make it out of this situation? There's the cheese factor I kind of took to be part of the 80s nostalgia and part of the humor kind of wittiness of the film itself. I actually really love the script. Each character is very unique, both in the way they talk and the way they're motivated throughout the film. I thought they juggled the script fantastically.
Yeah, that's really surprising. I wasn't expecting you to give it a 5. Yeah, that's
I
nice.
wasn't either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with both of you. I also gave mine a 4 out of 5. I feel like I fall kind of in the middle between you two, where, like, I'm with Tim, actually. I liked Hangman a lot in this movie. I liked his redemption at the end. It was just really heartwarming, and after everything that you've gone through, I just want to throw that out there because we're kind of past the character's point. I never got to say it, but yeah, I mean, I agree. The script just really sold this movie and like the story that was being told and the characters that you were dealing with. Yeah. Every character felt very in place for what they were saying and how they were reacting to stuff. Is it a little too like clean and like cheesy at times where it's like, yeah, I wouldn't call it perfect, so not a 5 out of 5, but I say 4 out of 5 is like, I mean, whatever's below perfect, I would give that because, again, it's just such a clean script. There's clean dialogue between every person. They react exactly how you think they would react in that moment to whatever's being said. And it's not like overdone. And as I always say, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It feels like Hangman, as cheesy and weird as he can be, his sarcastic, I'm better than everyone, does not overstay its welcome in the movie. It kind of feels right where it needs to be, where he pushes the right buttons at the right time. It's like, okay. And then Miles Teller, he has his emotional moments and his passive aggressiveness at times where it feels appropriate, but like he's still like, this guy is still in Top Gun. Like he's still professional about it in the best way that he can be given the circumstances.
There's even a scene like just in the script. I thought it was brilliant, and it goes right with what you're saying. When Tom Cruise first tries to call him out when they're dogfighting.
Yeah, exactly. That's a phenomenal
He calls him
sequence.
by his first name, and he does not answer.
Yep, exactly.
And he calls him by his first and last name, and he does not answer. And then Tom Cruise finally calls him by his military name.
Exactly.
And Miles Teller addresses him appropriately. And it's just like that little bit that like Miles doesn't want this personal relationship. He is here to do his job. And the script does that without going into as much detail as I just did. Like it just uses one exchange to clarify that.
So
it's brilliant.
4 out of 5. What's next?
All right. So next, the acting category, which
lovely.
going into a Tom Cruise movie, I normally know what I'm going to rank the acting category.
I feel like that's a bold statement. Very
Tom
divisive?
Cruise is in the same category as The Rock.
Yep, pretty much.
Who else?
One of the last movie stars, let's say, that exists.
Where you hire Tom Cruise to play Tom Cruise? You know?
I mean, I'm not going to.
All right, so am I going to kick this one off then?
Yeah, go ahead. Kick us off.
I'll kick this one off. So I actually gave the acting a 5 out of 5.
Oh my gosh. I'm very surprised by your score.
I am very surprised too, because like I said, it's a Tom Cruise movie. But I found myself like, this is the character Tom Cruise was born to play. Like more than Mission Impossible, more than, well, people hated Jack Reacher, but like,
understandable, I guess.
This is who Tom Cruise was meant to play. He delivers emotional scenes in this movie. Great. The ending of this movie, like, he has some emotional inflection in his voice that I believed it. I felt it.
Oh, totally.
And I was like, wow, Tom can put some range in there.
He can put some range in there when he wants to. There's
some excellent tension in there. Like, I was impressed by Tom in this movie, and scoring on Tom alone, probably a 4, because Tom Cruise plays Tom Cruise.
Totally. Yeah.
Miles Teller brings that up because Miles Teller delivers layers of emotions in this movie. Hangman, we've talked about Hangman a lot because he's really one of the standout side characters.
Yeah,
he's the cocky show-off. But he's a cocky show-off who comes around at the end, and he has this kind of human side that you start to see through. And the actor does a nice job of portraying that. You guys saw the original. Who's the love interest? I can't even remember her name.
Yeah, Jennifer
Connelly. Yep. She does an excellent job at her part in playing this, like, don't leave me again.
It's very touching, honestly.
Yeah, there is a lot of emotion delivered in this movie. And some of the scenes that you like don't expect, Tom Cruise playing, it was beach football in this one.
The beach football, yeah.
And like, first of all, he's out there keeping up with kids half his age. That's impressive because he is 60 years old now.
Is he really 60?
Yeah, he's 60 years old. He does not look it in this movie. He's out there keeping up with that, but then he goes from this fun scene and turns around and it turns into an emotional scene, and it turns into talking about building team, and he delivers it. And I gave it a 5 out of 5. I was truly impressed by the acting in this film.
Man, you're full of surprises tonight, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I gave the acting a 4 out of 5. I think it kind of goes back to what we've already said about some of the side characters. Like, they do a great job. They all fulfill their role really well. They don't quite stand out and like really sell me the 5 out of 5, but I don't want to take anything away from them because they all still filled their role out very well. And I believe all these characters are who they say they are in this movie. They all follow exactly the steps that they claim they have when you're first introduced to them. Like you said, Tom Cruise he just does phenomenal in this movie. He really does have some range, and that's awesome to see from again, one of our last movie stars in Hollywood, you could say.
A veteran actor.
Literally a veteran
yes.
actor. That man has been around forever, and I don't know why he hasn't aged yet. Yeah, he does great. Miles Teller is phenomenal. Their chemistry together throughout this entire movie is just, man, it's just fun to watch them poke and prod and like come to the end full circle how they did. The Iceman sequence, seeing Val Kilmer come back,
emotional.
oh my gosh, pulls at your heartstrings, and the fact that he actually like spoke in the movie was like super touching, and it was beautiful to see that.
I don't think that was him.
I'm pretty sure it was him. Maybe I'm wrong.
I thought they had. I don't think he's capable of speech.
No, he is, because in the documentary he speaks. So
oh, he does. Okay.
I mean, I don't know if. Don't quote me on that he was speaking in this movie, but I'm pretty sure it was him speaking. I could be wrong.
If he speaks in the documentary, I thought I read that
it doesn't matter who spoke. The point is that they got across a really emotional scene, and it really tugs. And again, Tom Cruise and him together just really sell that entire scene. It's easily one of the most memorable scenes in that entire movie. But yeah, I won't spend too much time on it. 4 out of 5. Everyone did a phenomenal job. Like I said, I just don't feel like the actors as a whole elevate it to that perfect 5 out of 5 for me, but don't take it away that they all did bad, because they all did phenomenal in the role. So
yeah, usually when I watch a movie, there's at least one character that just doesn't do it for me. And sometimes there's more. I mean, sometimes it's all the characters.
Yeah.
It's like I don't buy any of this. This movie had 0 characters that I did not buy.
Yeah.
Every single one, I was like, yep, I believe you. I believe you are this person. I believe you have this personality. Even some of the tertiary characters, like Bob and Phoenix, like, they didn't have a ton of speaking roles, and they weren't like necessarily super essential to the plot, but they were still present, and they still had their own quirks and personality traits. And like the way they interacted with each other was very much the like, we're kind of rivals in that we're trying to be better than each other, but we're also pals, and we also like have each other's back. Like, regardless of what happens, we are going to be there for each other. Tom Cruise and Jennifer Connelly had a fantastic romantic chemistry. I loved Jennifer Connelly's performance in this, and we haven't talked a lot about it yet.
No,
but like,
by all means, she deserves it, so go for it.
100%. She played it off perfectly with like, I like you / I love you, but like, I don't want to get too close because like we've been this on again, off again thing for a while. The like playful like banter that she gives, especially early on in the movie, where she's like, "Oh, ring the bell, pay for a round
the
of
bar
drinks.
scene.
Ring the bell, you get thrown out." Like, you could tell none of that was malicious. It wasn't like, "Oh, you wronged me, so I'm going to embarrass you in front of everybody." It was all very like playful, haha.
It almost comes across as flirting.
Yes, it was borderline
so
flirtatious, and that was so good. And so like, she did amazing. We've talked about the Val Kilmer stuff, like very emotionally moving. There was not a single character that I can point to in this movie. I did mention kind of earlier on that like there are a couple that are a little like stereotypical towards the beginning, but even with that, like, it's still believable.
Yeah. So is that?
So I gave it a 5 out of 5.
Okay.
I gave it a 5 out of 5 because every actor nailed their role, in my opinion.
Yep. So why don't you kick off the direction of this movie?
Direction, that is another 5 out of 5 for me. It was, I mean, people went where everything made sense. And that's when like the 10,000 foot view of direction in a movie is, does it make sense? Does it flow? Does it work? And yes, to all of that.
Yep.
I felt like it wasn't too fast. Like, it was paced well, wasn't too fast, wasn't too slow. Things developed when they needed to. There were a couple like conflicts thrown in along the way. There's the overarching conflict of, we have to get this mission done. But I mean, everything from someone passes out flying at hundreds of miles an hour in a jet. Like, what are you going to do with that situation?
Yeah.
There's people have to bail out at a certain point. Like, there's these other little things along the way. And I thought it was very, very well directed. It all worked for me.
I agree. It was 5 out of 5 for me. This is one of those movies that like the director sealed this deal for the entire film. If any one of these parts had been off, if any of the script had been off, if any of the acting had been off, if any element of the final vision had been slightly off, this would not be the movie that it is. And the director brought all of that together, making some of the most intense aerial combat scenes that I've ever seen, but also just making beautiful, like little emotional scenes. And I have to talk about this movie is beautifully shot. Like, it looks incredible from opening scene to closing scene. It's not just like the special effects look incredible. The lighting looks amazing. There are scenes, we talked about it on the Zack Snyder Justice League, where if you pause it at any moment, it looks like a photo. And this movie very much gets to that level where I was actually looking on IMDb page at stills from the movie, and I thought they were character posters, but they're just stills from the movie because it looks that good. And the director, 5 out of 5. I don't know what he has done, but I will be looking for more from him in the future because he knocked it out of the park on this.
Yeah, and that's going to be 3 5 out of 5s here for the direction. One thing I'll bring up that I didn't hear that I want to touch on was that there's a certain point at the end where you think the movie's kind of over, and then I remember seeing it for the first time in theater and thinking, oh crap, is this where the movie kind of starts falling apart because it feels way too long? And I think you guys know what I'm talking about specifically. Towards the end when they're attacking the enemy and then some stuff goes awry. And that's kind of the part where it's like, oh crap, this is going to do what a lot of these movies do now, where it just kind of overstays its welcome and we're going to get like an extended ending that feels really forced. Absolutely not. The ending is the peak of the movie. It just, you think you're at 11? Nah, man, there's a whole nother 5 levels that we can go on this movie. And that ending chase fight sequence is it takes you to the edge of your seat. Like, you thought you were there with all those other scenes where they're just pushing their limits. Nah, man, you haven't seen it until that final like 15 minutes where it's just like, wow, I thought I was going to really like come undone at the end here with this movie, but no, the ending for me like sealed the 5 out of 5 for direction. It was just a phenomenal ending to this movie.
He definitely handled one-upping himself.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Exactly. It was like, wow, this climax is really good. Oh, wow, this climax is amazing.
Yeah, no, it just takes it to the next level. And so I just wanted to point that out because I think that was definitely the time, like you were saying, there's kind of that point where it's like, oh, is he going to fumble it here? This is where it should end. It's like, oh no, I'm glad this went on another 10, 15 minutes. This was exactly what I wanted for the ending. So 5 out of 5.
A fun fact about this director, Joseph Kosinski.
Tell us.
He's mostly known for his computer-generated effects and CGI work.
Interesting.
Which is amazing that he used
basically none in this movie. Exactly.
He did Tron Legacy.
Oh, that's a movie we got to revisit.
And Oblivion, also with Tom Cruise.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that.
So,
I heard it was pretty good. I haven't seen it.
I have it. It was pretty good, but it didn't like...
It didn't do well from what I heard, but I heard it was actually a good movie.
I just think that's interesting that he's mostly known for that. But
yeah, so next is It Factor, right?
Yeah, I think we like if we're scoring It Factor the way we should all have the same score on this one.
I'm probably gonna be the one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'll just kick us off. Let me get it off the bat. I'm sorry. I give it a 4 out of 5.
What's wrong with you?
Just relax.
You don't read it.
Oh my gosh, why are you like this, man?
Because it says.
I mean, again, It Factor for me doesn't just go to just the cultural, just the box. Like, I get it. There's a lot going for this movie, but at the end of the day, like, it's still your very average, like, sequel that kind of hits the same story beats, but does it excellent and well, which is why I give it the 4 out of 5. Like, crucify me for it, whatever.
I just might.
You do it a lot, man, already. But I don't blame anyone for giving it a 5 out of 5. I like Spider-Man No Way Home was kind of like the cue of like, okay, people are still interested in the movie. I don't think it like it didn't do what Top Gun Maverick did, which was absolutely confirmed that movie theaters are here to stay. Because I know with like COVID happening, like the theater business was in real doubt of like,
What's COVID?
Yeah, that really like made us question like, are we ever gonna watch a movie like on the big screen again? I think Top Gun Maverick cemented the fact like movies are here to stay. Like it showed coming out when it came. It's like people are here to see movies, and it showed from the box office as it blew everything out of the water and stayed there consecutively for I don't even remember how long enough that I forgot the number. So I mean, if this movie is definitely, I think I would consider it one of the greatest sequels of all time because it takes what is a.
Are you diving into final thoughts?
Am I tagging into the final thought?
Are you diving into your final thoughts right now?
I can save some of those.
Or are you still okay?
No, sorry, I'll save some of those. But yeah, again, I think taking into that account, yeah, you can give it a 5 out of 5. I just think for me, I received it more as a 4 out of 5. Where this is absolutely a milestone. I just don't think it will be remembered as a 5 out of 5 in my eyes. So I know you're gonna hate me for that, but that's just how I received it personally. Please go ahead and just lay into me.
Well, here's the thing. I thought it was a perfect summer blockbuster. Based on the description of It Factor, that's a 5 out of 5 for me. Yes. And to Bryce's point, there was a time where we were like, are we ever going to have blockbusters again? Like, is that a thing anymore? Or is that a thing of the past? And it was a perfect, like the three of us went to the movie theater in the summer and we sat there and like shoveled popcorn into our faces and watched this movie and enjoyed it so much. And we talked about it the entire drive home afterwards.
Yes.
And like that to me is a 5 out of 5 It Factor. Like it was fun to watch the first time. I had fun rewatching it. Like I watched it with Katie, my wife, who has not seen the first one, and like she enjoyed it, not as much as me, but like she enjoyed it still. Yeah, I definitely think it's worthy of a 5 out of 5 It Factor.
So I agree with everything Bryce said, but to me, what Bryce said is a 5 out of 5 It Factor.
That's the beauty of this podcast.
It also means you didn't read the description of 4 and 5.
You in the details, Tim. Oh my gosh.
No, so because a 5 out of 5 It Factor means that the movie was not just entertaining, it had a cultural impact. And this movie definitely had a cultural impact between reinvigorating movie theaters after COVID to being, so just some fun facts about this, was the highest grossing film released in 2022, grossed 126.7 million in its opening 3-day weekend.
Beautiful.
And 160.5 million over 4-day Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
Finishing first at the box office and doubling Cruise's previous career best.
Oh yeah, that's true.
The film also had the largest Memorial Day 4-day opening weekend record. In its second weekend, it grossed 90 million. The 29% drop was the smallest ever for a film that had an opening over 100 million. Like, that is significant It Factor for this film.
Totally.
5 out of 5 through and through.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we have
awesome. Cool.
Cool. Whatever. No, that's what I love about this. I love how we can view that stuff differently. But Tim, why don't we get into the entertainment final score and just some final thoughts here, and let's kind of wrap this thing up. Go ahead and kick us off with that.
Okay, so entertainment, am I doing entertainment value final score?
Yeah, just kind of wrap it all together. Just entertainment, because that will go into
entertainment value. This is one that like I normally find a way to dock entertainment value. This
how evil of you.
This movie was a 10 out of 10 on entertainment value. I am in from beginning to end engrossed in this film.
Totally.
That brings my final score to a 49 out of 50.
Was it really a 49? Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
I docked it 1 for story. But I am 49 out of 50 on this movie. This movie is better than it had any right to be. It is, Bryce kind of said it earlier, but it should go down as one of the greatest sequels ever to be made.
Not even just that, it should go down as one of the perfect blueprints as to how to handle a sequel,
especially a legacy sequel
like this specifically. I know you can make the argument like, I wouldn't compare it to like Empire Strikes Back, like as
well. That would be
it's a different
people's
kind,
go-to for best sequel,
because like that's one of my, if not my favorite sequel of all time. But like I feel like this specifically, in a world where everything's a remake or a rehash, etc., or we're making sequels to stuff that is 30-40 years old, this should be the blueprint moving forward for that kind of sequel, period.
Yeah. This is, like I said, hands down, one of the greatest sequels ever made. I don't know if I would put it above Empire Strikes Back, because I wasn't alive when that came out, so I don't know what that felt like.
Oh, what a day that would have been.
Darth Vader father was already spoiled for me, so I will never know that feeling. But for this movie, and not even seeing the first one, I still gave this movie a 49 out of 50 because it was an entertaining, engrossing, and thrilling movie that I had more fun watching this than I can't remember the last time I had this much fun in a movie theater. Like,
true.
It was, it reminded me of why we go to the movies in the first place.
Absolutely.
So this, it will not just be one of the greatest sequels ever, but I also think much like the first one has had this lasting legacy for 30 years. Like, you'll run into like my in-laws who are like, oh, did you see the original Top Gun? Like, people still talk about the original Top Gun.
No, but I saw the second one.
Yeah. People should still be talking about Top Gun Maverick in 10 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it is a fantastic film.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you because mine was also a 10 out of 10. I'll say this is one of the very few movies, bringing my final score to a 45 out of 50. This is one of those few movies. I watched it recently with Megan because she hadn't seen it yet, and she watched the original Top Gun so that she could get ready for this one. This is one of the few movies where I watched it the second time, and this was on my small screen, and so it wasn't quite the same that it was in the movie theater, but I loved it 10 times more the second viewing than I did the first one even. Like, the first time is always a great experience, but that second time is where you really get to kind of like dive into everything else that you might have missed because you were too busy experiencing this movie in the theater. The second viewing was so much more just emotional for me. Like, it just, all those emotional moments and character building and arcs being completed just hit that much deeper for me. And I really got to enjoy like the more quiet moments of this movie when I watched it for a second time. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think this movie will be talked about in the next 10 years. And I totally agree. Like we said, one of the greatest sequels of all time and should be a blueprint for people moving forward, not just for how to make a sequel, but I really hope for using practical effects in movies and not relying on your CGI word. I know. We're going to get you started. I'm going to cut you off right there because I already know where you're going with that. So,
but you worry me with your blueprint statement.
With the blueprint?
Because then immediately we're going to have lesser sequels following that blueprint.
Listen, I'm just...
But I know what you mean.
A boy can dream,
well.
okay?
Yeah,
let this man dream of a world where we get good sequels.
Balanced legacy sequels.
Balance. Yes. We shouldn't get them often, but when we do, they should be Top Gun Maverick.
Tell me how excited you are for Indiana Jones 5.
Don't even. We'll get there when we get there. But yeah, I don't want to gush too much, but this movie was amazing, and I think every person should go watch the first Top Gun and then watch the second one, because I still think you should watch them back to back, because you'll really, those moments, like I said, where that second viewing, I really got to like enjoy those sweeter moments of nostalgia and some of the character building. I don't think a lot of that would have hit as much unless you watch that first one, although Tim's a good example of where it did hit. But I think it might hit that much more if you watch the first one. So, Caleb,
all right, so that's thoughts. 10, 10, and Caleb.
I'm going to break the mold and give it a 9 out of 10. It was amazing. Look, it was great. It was not quite perfect, but boy, was it close.
Yeah.
You guys have both touched on it. This movie had massive shoes to fill. Like, Top Gun, the original, is more problematic as a movie than this other one was. But Bryce kind of touched on it in the intro. Like, it's a cult classic. Like,
yeah,
elder millennials and anybody in Gen X lists that as their favorite movie. I personally know at least a half a dozen people that will say the original Top Gun is their favorite movie of all time.
Interesting.
Like, it hit so well in 1986 when it was initially released. This movie did a phenomenal job of filling those shoes and being like, we're gonna give stuff for the original Top Gun fans. There's gonna be stuff in there for people like you that did not see the original, and it's all going to be amazing. And like the notes hit just right. So I think that gets me 45 out of 50 as well. Yeah, probably my favorite movie of 2022, and yeah, it was beautiful. Loved it. I will definitely have this in the rotation of rewatch movies for sure.
All right. So between two 45s and a 49, that brings our average to a 46.3.
Beautiful.
So we would take that down to just a 46. And 46 puts it firmly in the amazing category. And I think we can all agree with that. It's an amazing experience of a film.
And I wouldn't blame anyone for rating it even higher than that at this point.
Good, because I rated it just 1 point away from perfect.
Yes,
so
you are absolutely in the right for doing that.
Well, and that's what
great.
I said before we started. I was genuinely shocked by my score.
I'm shocked at your
There's
score.
Like everything about this movie, you would not think that scores would be that high, but everything in this movie, as we've said a dozen times at this point, hits. It hits. There is not a fumble to be seen, and it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was a lot of fun. I really had fun with that conversation. So that
liked having Caleb with us.
Yeah, thank you to Caleb for coming on the show, having a good time, and sharing his thoughts on this movie.
You will be seeing him again.
You will be
listening to him again.
Yes, we will be back for another movie coming out here real soon. So be on the lookout for that. Outside of that, though, let us know what you thought of Top Gun, because again, our favorite movie, arguably, of last year. So we would love to hear other people's thoughts. In fact, it'd be great if we could hear thoughts from people who loved the first Top Gun and see what they thought about this sequel, because it's definitely not what the first one was, but like Caleb was sharing, this movie kind of hit all those right notes for a new generation and the old generation. I would love to hear what some people, Gen Xers and older millennials, really thought of this movie. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
So head over to the Average Reviews on Instagram.
Absolutely.
Click that link tree in the bio. There's a spot there to fill out the scorecard, as we call it, to score your movie. So you can do that. You can also follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, and of course on Spotify
and Facebook. And
we do have a Facebook too. I forgot about Facebook.
You tend to forget the Facebook, I've noticed.
That's because old people use Facebook,
and that's all I'm on. I'm sorry. But yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. Go ahead, leave a like, share with your friends. Again, talk with them about it, and then send us your reviews. We'd love to hear what you guys think about these movies. And that will about wrap it up. Thank you again, Caleb, for coming on the podcast, and we will see you all in the next episode.